equality, but it showed us humility. That Christ came to this world, became like one of us, and showed us the perfect example of to be selfless and to put others first. Why? Because Christ died for the world. Christ paid the death for every person, period, right? He came because he loved us, he died for us, and he rose again. So this is when we're looking at Philippians 2. This is important to grasp. So not only do we see Jesus existing, past tense, in the form of God, the nature of God. So this is talking about Christ's pre-existence. Then we see Paul equating here, did not regard equality, this thing that you cling to, this reputation, something to grasp, but what? He emptied himself or humbled himself. How? How did he humble himself? By coming to this world, taking the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men. Being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. Now, that's what we see in the incarnation. That's what we see in Christ's pre-existence, being with the Father, being by nature God, in heavenly realm with the heavens thereof, and he came to this world, took on our flesh, took on our likeness, humbled himself, being an example, and not only that, he went to the cross and died for you right here. Okay? This is the focus.
Yeah, but the incarnation, right, like the hypostatic union, it's about how God became a man, or it's like God became man. That's more of that would be the mystery. Like how God became man. It's not how God maintained being God. And so I don't know. Then Kelly's talking a lot about dying, that he died, which is only proper to, according to the flesh, human persons, and not divine persons assumed to human nature. And so I still don't see how he died. And then he talks about how being made in the appearance of a man, which sounds like he is just wearing the man like a mask, which is nothing at all what we are. I mean, like, human beings are not an appearance of being a human being. We are true human beings because we are complete with human persons. Just having human nature or being in possession of a human nature doesn't make you a man. You could be a God in the likeness of men, which is what Paul argues against, right? That we are not gods in the likeness of men, we are men. That's why I said sons of God are men, right? At least like Jesus and Adam. And Jesus is called like the new Adam or something. So yeah, that would have to be a human person. And so he spoke a lot about being only an appearance of a man, which undermines the human experiences, like I said. And then he just spends this whole video, like it's like almost an hour long, of not even proving how God became man, instead proving how God maintained being God, right? Which is the opposite of proving how he became a man, and then he talks about not clinging on to titles, divine titles, and so I guess divesting yourself of titles and self-emptying yourself of a divine title or something. Like, I mean, he never proved how that makes you a man. Instead, he proved the opposite. He said that still makes you God, even though you just don't have these titles anymore, I guess. And so he hasn't proven how God became man. How's God going to die? How are you going to prove it without being a quasi-Nestorian? Would you appeal to the divine person's human nature, as though that the divine person and the human nature are two distinct subjects and different subjects, right? Now they're not one and the same subject. And he talked about being in the form of God by nature, according to nature. But what does Jesus identify with? He identifies with everything that pre-existed with God that is everlasting. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. John says that God is light. Jesus says that God is spirit. And he talks about, all these things that are everlasting. Basically what the spirit is. In the Bible it says that Christ is the Spirit, right? Which is speaking of the Holy Spirit. And so the Spirit of Christ comes upon Jesus at his baptism. I think that is more proof of the incarnation than the birth of Jesus. I think the birth of Jesus is the man that is from heaven, the man that is born, an infant, the new man, right? Born of the Spirit. Jesus is of the Spirit. He's of the Word that was God. And he is the fullness of that, right? He even has the fullness of the deity at his baptism. That's when it says that he was full of the Spirit of God without measure. The fullness of the deity dwelt bodily. And so based on, like, if you say the baptism was the incarnation of the deity, then you know that God does not lose anything in the becoming one with man. Not becoming the man, but he became one with the man Jesus, the man who is born of the Spirit, right, born of God. And so that's why I could say that divine nature also means that, and having that before the foundation of the world, it depends on what context Jesus is saying this in. The glory which he had before the foundation of the world could be said in context of a predestined man or something that was also to take upon this, this task of being the lamb that is slain before the foundation of the world, because the Bible also says that. So I don't think just this claim of having glory before the world began does not prove that he preexisted as God the Son, but it proves that Jesus is identifying with what preexists with God, that is everlasting, according to Word, Spirit, light, the everlasting light. He said, "Light." Jesus is the light that come into this world. Jesus is the man of the Spirit, right? He's born of the Spirit, and so it is in that sense nature that he identifies with, right? The same divine nature of the Father, but I don't see how that entails that I should have to accept omnipotence and all these things that are as the qualities of God, like omnipotence, omnipresence, impassibility. That's why I associate divine nature with similarity, like it's similar to the nature of God. It's also called the nature of God, but it's everlasting, and then partake of the divine nature. And so it cannot possibly be that we partake of the Father's divine omniscience. And so, like, throughout the video, he just doesn't prove the idea that God became man. Instead, God just has an appearance of a man. Like, he proves the opposite, because even, like, at what point did he become a man? At his human birth? Or, like, at what points did he become a man? At his birth? But we're talking about the divine person, God. And so human births don't... They don't prove that God became a man. God's human birth doesn't prove that. Even divesting yourself of titles doesn't prove you're a man. At best, you're a titleless God. A God without titles, which is in some sense lesser than what you were before as God, a lesser God in some sense. And so I don't see how exactly did he become a man, which is why I say that the incarnation cannot possibly be the birth of Jesus. It has to be steady, like it has to be more of the baptism of the Spirit or coming upon him. And so I don't see throughout the video how he proves that God became man. Like I said, he proved the opposite, that God didn't become a man. He instead maintained being God, which is why it never follows that God dying and all the stuff that he also said that God died.
This attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who's that? Jesus, although he existed, this is talking about something that was already in existence. He was already being, that's another way it can be translated, being. He being in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped. So, who, meaning Jesus, although he existed, so he was already in existence in the form of not a God, in form of God, right? Who, although he existed in the form of God, Jesus, says here Paul, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped.
You see what I mean? Like he's still trying to prove that Jesus maintained being God rather than proving how Jesus became a man, right? And or he just became man. So he doesn't want to say a God because he thinks like it's a separate essence. But no, a God would be in reference to person. This is why like people who believe in the hypostatic union, they think that that Jesus is not a human person, so he's not a man, but he is just simply man. Like he possesses just generic human nature. And so a God would be even a person of the same nature, but not the same as, like the Father is not the same person as the Son, but they have the same deity, right? But I would say they are gods because Jesus is a distinct, different divine person within the same nature. So in that reference, in that sense, it would be a God. And so it's not that he is separate from God according to essence, but that he is a different person. Even the people who partake of the divine sonship, the man, the human persons, that manifest the nature of sonship, like Jesus and Adam and things like that. Yeah, we are one son according to the nature of sonship, but we are also a plurality of different sons. Yet we don't have the same divinity as the God. That's like a God doesn't necessarily mean you mean like an Aryan or something. Like it just mean a different person from the same nature or something. Like a different son within the same nature of sonship or so. If that makes sense.
Okay, where's this attitude we're seeing from Jesus here? But emptied himself, taking taking the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men. This is talking about Jesus coming in this world and becoming a man, taking on our likeness. Being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Being originally.
The passage in Philippians doesn't teach that God humbled himself and became a man. So now it's about a man, even a begotten son of God, right? A man, a human person, taking on the form of another man, a humble man, right? Because he could be like the king and yet not lose the title at all of the king. And he could still take on the form of a humble servant. Like, he's in the appearance of a man, but he's not an actual man because he's God in a man. So he's just proving that he is God in the likeness of men, which is not at all what Jesus is. Jesus is a begotten man who is like the fullness of the God-bearer, like he has the fullness of God in him. And so, yeah, you could say that he is the fullness of the incarnate God, which I would associate with the Spirit of God and not God the Son. And as far as titles, I mean, Jesus is called the King, right? The King of Israel or something like that, right? And so it's like, even if he takes on the form of a humble servant, he doesn't have to divest himself of the title King or anything. In fact, it doesn't make him it doesn't make him any different, right? He's still God. But the whole mystery is how God became man, not how God maintained being God.
To be. This is talking about who Jesus was prior to his incarnation. To be. So Philippians 2:6, to be in the form of God, Philippians 2:6, and being originally. So originally, Jesus was in the form of God prior to his incarnation. Now, why is that important? Well, let's look at another word here. This is over here for the word form. This is the word, we see the word nature as the word nature, right? And here, we'll see here, so it talks about Philippians 2:6 and also 7, but 2:6 here, right? This is what's going on here. The form by which a person or thing strikes the vision, the external appearance, goes on to say, and then it goes on to talk about over here, then Philippians 2:6, right? Philippians 2:7, this whole passage, as I've shown more fully, blah, 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 with which compare the different view and gives you different people's names, is to be explained as follows. Is to be explained as follows. So here we see Thayer, and we see here the lexicon, which can be read on Bible Hub, and this is also on Blue Letter that has this over here as well. So here, pertaining to Philippians 2:6, who although, right, formerly when he bore the form in which he appeared to the inhabitants of heaven of God. Sovereign. Sovereign. Goes on to say, yet did not think that this is equality with God was to be either clung to or retained, but emptied himself of it so as to assume the form of a servant, in that he became like unto men. And it goes on to say, was found in the fashion as a man. As a man, right? So here,
See what I mean? Like, self-emptying of divinity does not make you a man. It makes you a lesser God. It doesn't even make you a gloryless man. A man without glory doesn't make you that. And so that's what I'm saying, like, how does this prove that God became man? That's why Philippians is not a passage of the incarnation. Especially if you, like I said, associate it with the baptism. Because the Holy Spirit is more of the exact representation of God, the likeness of God. And how that descends to Jesus, and how Jesus is full of that Spirit. That's when you start seeing the references of the fullness of the God dwelling bodily in Jesus, basically. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, how does divesting yourself of divinity make you become a man? In fact, at best, you're just a God in the likeness of man, which is exactly not what we are. And he keeps talking about that he just has an appearance of a man, which undermines human experiences, like I keep saying. It undermines the human experiences. And then let me just hear what else he's going to say.
See how this word can be understood, which is the word morphe. Go back up. This is the Greek word here, morphe. And this is what we're talking about, the word form here. It has the meaning of the form by which a person or thing strikes the vision, external appearance. Also, Strong's definition, morphe, though the idea of adjustment parts, shape, figuratively, nature, form. So we're talking about here, who was Jesus by nature or form prior to his incarnation? As we just read a moment ago, what did we read? Who, although formerly when he was bore the form in which he appeared to the inhabitants of what? The inhabitants of heaven. That, again, as we understand the context of Philippians 2, points to his pre-existence. And
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What pre-existed? The way, the truth, and life. What is everlasting about God, kingdom, right? Even the Spirit is present when God creates things, right? You have the Word, even heaven, the eternal heaven where God is, right? Yeah, all that can be referenced to nature, like I said before, that God is light, everlasting Spirit, tree of life, manna from heaven, right? All of that can reflect nature, a form of God, or what Jesus is born of, right? That's why I said that he is a man that is basically born of the spiritual kingdom, or the pre-existent eternal kingdom, or something like whatever pre-existed with God, right? And so it doesn't prove that he's God the Son. Like that's what I'm saying is it causes a big problem for even the verse that he's trying to prove, that even though he has not proven, right, that God became man, he keeps trying to prove that he maintained his prior form while taking on the form of a man, which is another way of saying God in the likeness of man, that God who just possesses a human nature but is nothing like us because he's not a human person. And so that's why I say you can never associate that one with a human, with being an actual man, because he's not. And so he has to be like us, being a begotten man, which he isn't. I said in his human nature is like to divide him according to his nature. The divine person is to be an historian, because it causes a split, and it ends up with you interpreting him as though he is not the divine person, right, of the human nature. Because it's like if he were the divine person of human nature, then no, he does not experience his human birth nor human death, because Mary did not give birth to God, in the sense that she did not procreate the deity. And so his own human birth does not apply to him. That does not make him a man either. He is still God even in the moment of his human birth. And so that's what I said. That's why it's a problem. You have not proven how he became the man at all, because he maintained being God.
Form of God. He bore the form of God. You take away the parenthesis here for a second. He bore the form of God. Yet did not think of this equality with God was to be eagerly clung to or retained. We'll talk about that in a second here. So he had equality already prior to his incarnation. It was something he didn't cling on to. We'll talk about that in a second here, right? But he emptied himself. And that word empty can also have the meaning of humbled himself to what? So as to assume the form of a servant, in that he became like unto men.
Equality with God, it could be still a man that has equality with God, because the Son of God is uniquely Son of God, right? Has the Spirit without measure. And so it is not that he receiveth a lesser divinity. No, he receives the same divinity. But I would say that like all sons receive the measure of Spirit, right? As it says in the Bible, that some men receive the Spirit with measure, but Jesus receives it without measure. And so the equality with God could still be a man who has the same divinity, but of the highest, like of what, like it said, without measure. So it's not that he has a lesser divinity, but similar or something, because they could be like the ones who receive the divinity, right? They receive the divinity with measure. It doesn't mean they received a lesser divinity. They received same divinity, but with lesser measure. So it's only the measure that is lesser. It's not the quality of the divinity. Like they did not receive a different kind of divinity, if that makes sense. They received a lesser measure of it. And Jesus has the fullness of that. And so, yeah, a man can still have equality with God, and certainly this unique begotten Son. The passage in Philippians is better expressed as a human person, a human son, self-emptying, because it doesn't say anything about God having to self-empty. As I showed you, if you look at it like the incarnation in terms of the baptism, the Holy Spirit comes down upon Jesus, you will see that in that context, you see that God does not lose anything in becoming one with the man Jesus, but did not become the man Jesus, right? That's how a man is born of this God. And these apologists, they don't want to believe that their understanding of the incarnation is just wrong. And hopefully I spoke clearly. All right. And if you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Thank you, and God bless.